Yeah, I know what you're thinking. We will curry anything. The running joke in Trinidad and Tobago is, as Trinbagonians, we will curry any and everything. But I can guarantee you that this recipe, curry cassava, is not from Trinidad and Tobago. Well, the origins of it, for me, that is, about 3 years ago. Yeah, and it's taken me a while to actually share this recipe with you all because I did run tests with frozen cassava. Version where I boiled the cassava first, and this version that you're seeing with actual fresh cassava. About 3 years ago, someone reached out to me and she mentioned to me that she grew up in rural Guyana, very poor, a lot of kids, and her grandmother, she was one of many children in the family, and her grandmother would make curry cassava for them. Over the years, she's been living in Canada, immigrated to Canada, and over the years, she's lost touch with that recipe. Only after stumbling upon my website, she thought she would reach out and ask me if I knew the recipe for curry cassava. Now, when I'm struggling with a recipe that I can't find in cookbooks and online, I usually reach out to my mom. Mommy didn't know anything about this because she never had it before. My dad, same thing. I usually reach out to my dad. And my mom and my dad, different geographical locations in Trinidad, they grew up, so recipes would be different for them, and this is why they are my source for recipes. I couldn't find anything, and being in Canada, I couldn't reach out to elders in the village of Guarcara where I grew up to ask for help in the recipe. I did reach out to my aunt, and she grew up with her grandparents who were sugarcane farmers. And it has nothing to do with it. I'm just giving you the story. She was very familiar with the recipe in Trinidad and Tobago, in the village she grew up in, and she explained the recipe to me. I used that as the base for this recipe of curry cassava. But again, there are two other versions, one using frozen cassava, and two, the other one where I boil the cassava first. So Chrissy at CaribbeanPot.com, I'm sorry it's taken me this long to share the recipe. I know you reached out. I don't even recall your name anymore, but here we go. I hope it brings justice to the one that Granny would make for you. I think you said Aji. Aji would make that recipe for you. So I do hope. Yeah, there we go. Of course, we'll need cassava, or some people call it yuca. And this one is covered in a wax, and that sort of white that you're seeing there. That is how we get it in Canada in the grocery stores. Now, the thing about it is, with the ones we get here, you can see they're both covered in wax, and sometimes they're a lot bigger, sometimes they're a lot smaller. The thing is, chances are when we cut it open, it could be black on the inside, and this is why I much prefer using frozen cassava, which is already peeled and everything else. So if you wanted to use frozen cassava, you can. I highly recommend it. We also need some garam masala, a ton of garlic, onion, some cumin seeds, or what we call jeera seeds. I'm going to put some Caribbean green seasoning in there, a Scotch bonnet pepper. I like it a bit spicy. Of course, salt, water, vegetable oil, and black pepper. Totally up to you how much you put in it. Curry powder, of course, we're making curry cassava. Now, here's the thing. This is a loose take. This is my interpretation of that dish. So please, if you are from Guyana or anywhere else, you could be from Fiji. I know Fiji are doing the same kind of thing like what we're doing over here out in the islands out there. Trinidad, Guyana, and wherever else you're from and you know this recipe, please, I'd love to hear your take on it, alright? Anyhow, as far as the cassava is concerned, what you want to do, and I'm just going to move everything back to give us some more room here. Yeah. What you want to do is to cut off the stem, and this is what I'm talking about. That black mark there. Yeah. Let's see if this can work. There we go. So you can see what I'm talking about. The black ribbons that runs all the way through. We're gonna get rid of that. But what I want to do is to cut it up into manageable pieces, like so. This is how it's supposed to be. Not so much here, but what you want to do is using a paring knife. You're going to see the thickness of the skin is probably about 2 millimeters thick, and all we're going to do is use the sharp edge here, and we're going to go the depth of the skin, and you're going to work your knife all the way down like so, right? So you notice the sort of cross section that I did there, and all you would do is then using your knife. Typically it's a lot easier than this. You will just peel back and pull. Unfortunately, there we go, it's working for me now, but the point is you just got to pull back on the outer layer skin, or if you wanted, just peel it like this. Yeah, but old school, they would do the first sort of peel that I showed you there. If you wanted to use a potato peeler, you can do that as well. You just want to make sure you get rid of the outer skin, and I'm going a bit deep because I want to get rid of the sort of black ribbon lines that we saw there, like here. Yeah, then what you want to do is cut it down the center, and here you'll see a sort of a ropey sort of piece we need to get rid of. So using my paring knife, and be very careful when you're doing this, you would cut a sort of a channel and you would pop that out, and that is the sort of ropey, sort of viney interior. Then I'm going to give this a good wash. I'm just going to trim this off, like, oh, just a bit more there. Yeah, we're losing rail, but anyhow, we're going to cut it into 1-inch pieces like so. I'm going to give that a good rinse, and then we'll proceed. And as predicted, I had to run out the road and get a couple more pieces of cassava. You know, earlier I spoke about the sort of lines, that black line, that ribbon that runs through it. Well, the bigger piece of cassava I have, it was just, it is what it is. I expected that, so just be aware that if you are in Canada with the waxed cassava, you may run into that problem. It means it's old, it's been sitting there for a long time, but small thing. The pieces which were good, because I had to run out the road to the grocery store, and yo man, a lot of work. Anyhow, the pieces which were good, I have it in water just so it doesn't oxidize and discolor and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue. It's only fitting that I pull out the original Caribbean Dutchie pot. I don't have the Guyanese style iron pot, but I do have the Dutchie pot here. 2.5 tablespoons of vegetable oil. To that, we're gonna add onion. And my heat is on medium low. Just gonna hit that a quick little stir like so. Garlic. We're gonna go in with some of that cumin seeds now. Scotch bonnet pepper. And again, as with everything else, you're gonna add as much, any one ingredient you like more or you don't like, you either leave it out or you add more, yeah? So I'm just gonna hit that a stir. And with that Scotch bonnet pepper, it's a green one, so I'm not getting the raw heat of a ripe Scotch bonnet or a fully mature Scotch bonnet pepper. Now, were this in a Guyanese household, they would have been using wiri peppers. I have some in the freezer, but I'm too lazy to go downstairs to grab it. What we're going to do now is turn the heat down just to low and let that go for about 3 or 4 minutes, just to soften up the onion, the garlic, to pull out the flavor of that cumin or jeera as we call it. And of course that Scotch bonnet pepper is going to do some wonderful things. I like my curry spicy, so you will always see me, yo man, I love the thing. I love Caribbean Sunshine Bad Bag. Caribbean green seasoning. And that is just a blend or puree of all the herbs we like using in our dishes. And the Spanish-speaking Caribbean got their own, the French-speaking Caribbean got the piece. So that's a quick stir. If you head over to CaribbeanPot.com, I have that recipe there. You guys can go and check it out. Of course, a big batch and a small batch version, because I know not everybody will use it as much as I do. It is curry cassava, so of course that curry powder must go in there, and that is about 2 tablespoons of my favorite curry powder. Use your favorite. Now if you're doing this gluten-free, may I suggest that you read the label of the curry powder that you're using, simply because there are times they add filler to it, and that filler could be farine or it could, flour or whatever. I'm not sure what they add to it, but just be mindful of that. The other thing is, you may want to read the label of the curry powder you use as well too, if you don't make your own. Sometimes, well, most of the times from what I've seen, and it's something new to me, they add salt in there as well too. So if you're in a low sodium diet, be mindful of that. And what we want to do now is sort of fry or sort of wet toast, if that makes sense at all, the different spices which makes up that curry powder. Allow them to bloom, and in doing so, you will get an overall better tasting curry at the end. Yeah, so always try to do that, sort of wet toast or fry it just a bit. Gonna move that around just a tiny bit more. I'm gonna give this another 2 minutes. Then I'm gonna crank up the stove and we'll add the pieces of cassava. Before I stir it, I'm gonna go in with my salt. Later on, we can adjust that salt to your own liking. The black pepper. And the sort of schwa that you heard there, that was the remaining water from whence we washed the cassava. I have my garam masala now. I'm just going to hit that a bit of that garam masala. Now here's the thing. Exactly how I did the curry powder by sort of frying it, wet toasting it. If you wanted to add the garam masala in there, you can add it at that point as well too. I just like it at this point here because what I'm going to do is give that a really good stir, and it's going to sort of combine with everything that we got there. Give that a stir, and I want to scrape the bottom of the pot there. That sort of curry fond that you have on the bottom there, that's pure gold, you know what I mean? That sort of wannabe bun. Of course, we will need water to make sure this thing cooks fully. Just adding my water at this point. What I want to do is add enough water to sort of somewhat cover everything. We're going to bring that up to a boil, reduce it to a rolling boil. Now there are two ways you can do this. One, you can do it somewhat dry, more of a sort of a bunje masala kind of thing, where it's more dry than anything else. The other version is with liquid that we're going to create a sort of a gravy or a sauce with. So when you eat in your sada roti or whatever roti with this, you have that gravy to dippy dip, you know what I mean? According to my daughters when they were small, grandma making dippy dip today, they meant sada roti. I have it on a rolling boil for about 5 minutes now, and you can see all I'm doing is tucking it under the water just to make sure that cassava boils and get nice and soft. Now remember what I said earlier there, you can leave gravy or you can cook it all the way down dry, and you can enjoy cassava as it is right there. You don't need the roti, but I can just see the roti with the gravy going hand in hand. 25 minutes later, and this is what we have. The cassava is falling apart. That gravy is nice and thick, as you can see on the bottom there. Just look at that. Have your roti ready and you're golden. Anyhow, if you want to cook this down further, get it more thick and eat it somewhat like a sort of a oiled down kind of business, you can do that too. Finish it off by one, taste it, adjust the salt to your liking, and two, if you have shadow benny or culantro, or if you don't have that, shadow benny is culantro, you can use cilantro, which is coriander. Chop it up fine, finish it up. I don't have any of that at the moment. What I'm going to do is shut off my stove, allow the residual heat to do its thing, and I'm going to tuck in a lovely vegan, vegetarian, leave out the salt, it could be ital. Yo man, I'm so glad that person reached out to me 3 years ago and told me about this recipe, because it is just insanely good. Alright? Alright.